Jackie White. Thank you, Robin. Robin Ivy, Nancy Haynes, Kevin Cormier, and myself, and Jeremy Hammond. Okay. We will start off with the minutes. Let me get that up here. Hold on. So the minutes from 10/21. Lisa, Bloom, if you had not had a chance to read those, you can abstain. But it's up to you. But if anybody had any questions or comments for the minutes, otherwise I will take a motion to approve the 10/21 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the policy subcommittee meeting minutes from October 21st, 2025.
And Lisa, will you second?
I second, yeah.
Okay. No comments or changes? So then Jackie?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay. Robin, were there any anyone signed up for public comment?
Nope, nothing.
Okay. Then we're going to start off with DIB. And if everyone could go into that from the policies under review, there is 2 DIBs in there. The one that does not have an arrow is the one I believe everyone should be in. Currently, Nancy and Kevin are in there, and myself. So if you look at the top, the other policy, I believe, is just me. So if you just see me, then you're in the wrong one.
Okay, I think I'm in.
Yes, I see you, Jackie. Okay. I'm just going to, I had made a couple of small changes that I was adding in. I'll talk about them as I go through, just so you know, and then we can discuss just so we have this. So the and revolving accounts in that second paragraph, I had a question mark whether we keep, and I decided, thinking about it and reading this, revolving accounts, we're going to have another policy on revolving accounts, so I am going to take it out of here if everyone is okay with that. The second change that I had made, and let me put that in here right now. Okay, just change that. Oop. There we go. The OPEB reserves had gotten left out of the different reserve policy classes for reserve funds, so I added the OPEB in. Okay. This paragraph that I added down here, I'm thinking of an alternative to the paragraph below it. Again, part of what I'm struggling with here is there's a lot of language. I pulled this from one policy. I believe it was mostly from Triton fiscal policy. Nancy shared another one with me from Acton Boxborough, I think it was, and I've seen, yeah, there's also a policy from Pentucket that's in our packet, and they all have slightly different language on how they state what this policy is about and what the school committee's goals and or philosophy is on these reserves. So I am very much open to changing a lot of the language from the first paragraph, which talks about, you know, it's a means of ensuring long-term financial health and flexibility, and goes into, you know, financial rating agencies. We don't have to have that in here if we don't want to. That's all kind of just going about trying to explain why we have this policy and how we feel it should be used in the district. So this last paragraph I put in here made it a little bit more succinct in my head. It may not in yours, but just a different way of stating a lot of the same things. But I am certainly not always the best wordsmith. So I'm very much open to changing any of that philosophical language of what we want to do.
So is the first question just looking at these 2 paragraphs highlighted, like, are we choosing
We can certainly look
between
at that
those?
right now. Yes.
Okay. Whoops. I mean, my preference is the one that's in pink that
Okay.
ends with triggering an examination for necessary adjustments.
Okay.
I don't know, I just like adjustments better than like having to reduce,
Yes.
right?
Yep. And again, we can also go with that second one and just change the reduce to necessary adjustments as well.
Yeah.
What I was trying to uh, kind of put through is that the philosophical change that we're looking at is really going from where we have a lot of reserves built into the budget for things that we know are very, I don't want to say volatile, but variable, like special education costs, health insurance costs. Those are very variable accounts. And currently, right now, with putting in all of our E&D, those are built in to our budget. If we don't want to be using our E&D every year, we kind of need to shift that philosophy and make sure that we have the reserves in their own account, not be afraid to tap them as if they were in our budget if we need to because of some of these variables in one year. But basically spend our budget for what we appropriate. So we don't want to have the $1 million or $2 million excess of unexpended funds at the end of the year. We want to, have that down lower under 500,000. And should big surprises come up, we have the money to take care of that, but it's not built into the budget, and we're not always sitting there trying to guess how much we need in the budget from year to year. It's just always sitting in a pot ready to be used, and then we can replenish if we use it. Does that make any sense?
I think you just have to keep in mind, Randy, that once you vote that, let's say you need it for health insurance or
Yeah.
a placement moves in and we don't have enough to cover in circuit breaker. It will be a wait because school committee will vote it, increase the budget, and then it has to go to the member towns and they have 45 days to approve it or disapprove it. So they actually can control whether we increase the budget mid-year or not. Presumably they wouldn't care if their assessments aren't changing or if their assessments are going down. They probably wouldn't necessarily care, but that is the process. So they'll still have to go through that.
But we also will have other reserves that don't rely on them because we will have revolving accounts that we keep. We
Yep.
have the circuit breaker that they don't have any control over. We have, or rather, they don't have a vote in the middle of the year. We have, for the moment, we don't know how many more years, school choice.
Yep.
So we do have other places that
Yep,
we
you
can pull
do.
from and replenish as needed. And I think if we have a pretty good relationship, I think, with the towns enough that if we say we need to put E&D funds in to pay for something, I don't think they're going to push back in the middle of the year. The pushback will be for the next year if we try and increase those costs substantially to cover that for the next year's budget. But again, building a relationship where it's very transparent on, we budgeted for this because these are all of our knowns plus a little bit, and we had, it would be very easy to say, this was what happened this year that we needed more money that we completely did not anticipate, or that came up that we didn't have budgeted because we weren't able to foresee that. It becomes a lot easier to have that conversation and point to things versus just having the excesses in the budget and moving money around all the time. It obscures what exactly happened that we didn't plan for. So I'm hoping that, this policy will help strengthen that relationship with the towns, that we're not going to have an issue if we need to use E&D in the middle of the year.
And again, if we approve this policy today, it still gets put forth to the larger committee, right? So it's not like
Absolutely, it
the
does.
three of us are
No.
deciding
All
on
we're
this.
doing is bringing something to the full committee for consideration, and
Yeah.
they can, the entire committee can sit and debate like we do in the meeting.
Mhm.
Everyone can come back to another meeting with suggestions. We can have everybody just submit their suggestions to the policy subcommittee. We have another meeting to take a look at what was suggested and whether we want to or how to put that in. So there's a lot of different ways that we can go forward, but no, we are not making any decisions.
Okay.
Frankly, with such a big change in this, I want to get it in the hands of the full committee
Right.
because we need to have this conversation.
Agreed.
It's possible we go in and, you know, everybody else is sitting there going, this is a terrible idea. We don't want to go in this direction. And then it's
Yep.
just done.
Yep.
And then
Well-
we have to go back to the drawing board. But it's a conversation that we need to have and make sure that the rest of the committee is on board.
Well, Brad, didn't you say that you would like to get our budget
Yeah.
to this point too?
Brad is not here, by the way.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But
But yes, he did. And
he did say that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
that's okay. I'm not anticipating that the school committee is not going to be on board with getting rid of or taking E&D out of our budgets. I think everyone would be happy not to have that stress of, are we going to have the same amount next year? Or are we going to have a deficit for the towns? But it's a matter of how. And that's what this policy kind of addresses is how are we, you know, what are we going to do when the E&D, when the, you know, we're not using E&D as revenue. And that approach can be very different.
Okay.
So, okay. So again, Nancy, Kevin, the 2 paragraphs, what are your feelings on that?
I know we took immediately out of the original paragraph, but we put it back in.
I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, and I'm sorry. Kevin, I'm sorry. I was doing 2 things at once. I didn't quite catch your question.
No, I was just noting that we talked last time that we had taken the word immediately out of the paragraph,
Oh.
but now it's back in. So I'm just
Okay.
curious on the re-inclusion of it.
That would be because I was working on the other policy and missed that we had taken that out. So I can certainly take that out. So.
What's the idea of the first sentence? Which one are we?
Okay, you're talking about the North Middlesex Committee understands that the budget is a good faith contract with the community members from each town. Okay. I had trouble trying to figure out exact wording on how to express what I wanted. What I was just trying to get across, and again, I'm not always great at having, you know, in words on paper express this, but what I'm trying to get across is we are going to the towns for money. We are asking them for money, and it needs to be a mutual respect and a mutual agreement that the money that we are asking them for is going to be used for what we say it's going to be. So if we decided, and completely hypothetical, and we wouldn't do this, but we're going to ask them for a, 10% increase every single year because we want to go and have $1 million in our savings within 2 years. That wouldn't be good faith if we told them that it was all because we needed it for the students. So again, fiscal reserves aside, what we ask for them for money each year, we need to show them with the budget where we're using it, what we're using it for, and substantiate basically why we're asking for the money. If we continually, without needing reserves to go back into the budget, if we continually have, $2 million in unexpended funds, then that's not really good faith because we're asking them for their money, and then we're not expending it. So it was just another way of trying to say, from the other paragraph, that the budget should be prepared for known expenses, and reserves are for unanticipated expenses outside of the budget.
Okay,
it-
I think,
yeah.
I think there's a lot of, energy about the fact that we did close out funds last year, and I guess my question on that is, we've done that pretty much every single year. I get it. You know, you have a $67 million budget with 1,000 lines. That's not like the town's budget. They don't really get to, I guess they can certainly approve or disapprove our budget, but the school committee's control is over that, not really the town. So I just want to make sure that whatever language we put in here, it's that there are our policies and requirements for the budget, especially in a regional school where the school committee gets to control what those line items are and how they're utilized. So I just wanted to, I guess, figure out if there's any way to add that language, because you're really, some of these decisions really are school committee based, not, and including the fact that we had funding left. I mean, we did that on purpose, knowing that we would have a problem if we didn't have, you know, if we're gonna take out $1.8 million out of our budget,
Right.
and not have anything to replace it with, then we would have created a problem this year.
Exactly.
So I think that was,
that's the cycle I'm trying to get out of.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to look at our budget and try and guess at, we put in $2 million in E&D funds. We have to make sure we have 2 million plus at the end of the year of unexpended funds. That's one more thing to try and keep track of.
well, I think if you have the language that says that we want our reserves to be in the, I know I added a 3 to 5% range, then it's not, that's the goal, right? So however we get there, I guess the policy doesn't have to decide how you get there.
No, but I was trying to put in here, and again, the policies are the school committee's pathway to tell the district the direction we want to be and the general direction of what we expect.
Yep.
Personally, and again, I open it up to Lisa and to Jackie, and then obviously to the larger committee, is Nancy, you had once said that we used to spend our budget down to, theoretical zero. Obviously we had some play in there and we had a little bit left over, but we used to at one time only have a couple $100,000 left at the end of the year.
And I think one of the things that happened at the end of the year is that there would be this last minute shuffle to revolving, and that to me is not visual. You can't see that.
Okay.
So when you get to, like, let's say we get to June 1st and we need $1 million, we're going to go to school committee and say we need $1 million because we didn't make it, or we had 3 move-ins in May. I don't know. I just don't know if it's visible once you do that. If you're at zero, did you really spend it to zero? No, we didn't. We moved it to other funds. So as long as everybody's aware, that's kind of what's going to happen potentially on a year that we have some unanticipated things happen. And also the timing of all that. If you're in May and you end up with a problem, I guess, I think we can certainly head towards that direction. I guess I just want the policy to be flexible so that, let's say there is a year where you don't expect something to happen, or you're in, you end up with more money in tuitions, which happened this year. We had all year long, we had $1.2 million over the budget. That's way more than 500,000. So we could be in a situation where, you've planned down to zero, and then all of a sudden you've used up all your circuit breaker because you had $1.2 million over. So I don't think, I guess what I'm saying is it just needs to be flexible enough that, and we can adapt when there are issues. I mean, and also I'll just, as health insurance, as an example, that's a little more straightforward. We know who our employees are right now. However, the shuffle of employees now compared to what it used to be, especially way back when, is way more, and the costs are much higher. So we end up with, if we don't plan for variation in those numbers, we're gonna end up looking like we don't know how to budget. Because we, obviously with, 270 people on health insurance, there's gonna be changes. So you didn't even plan for a few people to change? No. So, I mean, I guess I wanna feel like comfortable that what we're planning in the budget is achievable,
Right.
but also
And
have room
yeah,
to make those kind of changes when they do occur.
Where are the spots, Nancy, where you would look to make it more flexible? Like, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right spot in the policy.
yeah. And Nancy, the other thing also is I don't want to take out every possible reserve. So, and that's where I've spoken a little bit about if we have a history, a 5-year history, 3-year history, that we know that we, on average, add 3 new people to our insurance. Then we budget for 3 new people in the insurance line. That's good budgeting to go by historical and not sit here and say, well, it is possible we might have 8, but we haven't had 8 in the last 10 years, but we're going to still go ahead and have that in there because we also have to have money left over for the E&D to be replenished. So I really want to kind of just tighten up on where we have the reserves based on what we typically spend. So does that make sense? And does that give you more flexibility than you thought that I was trying to do in here?
Yeah, I mean, the changes I made to the language, I think, help with that, where you're giving it a range instead of saying an exact percentage.
Okay, yep.
Because you can't, there's a lot you can't control, especially as you get, you have control through the year because you're seeing your budget through the year. And you can look at it, but you don't know what's coming all the time.
Yes.
And so I think that's having, and it's sort of like hitting a dartboard at some point, especially later in the year. Like, are we close? And as long as I can know that I can just go to a revolving account, I guess I'm fine with that. It's just the revolving account, especially like school choice, is really school committee's purview. So they would have to make that decision, not me specifically. I mean, I can move some things I probably could use, but especially if we were saying that if we're gonna have a reserve policy in, on how those things can be used, you might end up with less options as you go towards the end of the year.
Okay. Well, we haven't even started to talk about the revolving accounts. But just looking at the E&D and the capital stabilization, it's tight budgeting to try and tighten up where we have the reserves and to take the E&D out. What I see happening is, one, hopefully, we're winding up just positive. And if that's the case, we still have a little bit of money to add places and replenish. And then there'll be a couple of years where we have to dip into our reserves. And when that's the case, when we have an excess, we replenish it again. And when I put down the 3%, that was kind of just a spot to try and target. And then if we get over that amount that we're targeting, we can consider these other things. Nothing. I'm trying to write this to say that we're not you know, you put in the considering, I think I had something similar to that. I just added a couple other things in here. So it's just different things that we might want to think about instead of letting the E&D get all the way up to 5% and then have to use it as revenue again, which kind of starts this whole cycle all over again if we have to put money towards revenue for the following year. I really want to avoid, I think that should be a very last resort, that we put money towards a future budget's reserve, because as soon as you're putting in that one-time money, either the town's assessments have to go up when that comes out, or we have to reduce our budget. Much lesser degree when you're talking about a couple $100,000, but it's still not a place I want to see us get to. So I was targeting 3% so that we never get to that 5%. Then if it starts to gain in money, we can say before we have to say, hey, you know, let's transfer a little bit more over to capital stabilization. Let's give a little bit more to OPEB. Let's, you know, kind of try and find something different for that money instead of letting it get to that 5% range where we have to use it towards the assessments. Because that is the biggest problem that we have, is any time that we put in money towards revenue as one-time money, and I'm sure everybody knows this, we run that risk of the towns aren't appropriating what they need to for that full budget. So we either have to reduce the next year or they have to increase the next year. If we can take that out and pay for things in different ways, find more one-time uses, designate different things as one-time uses to be able to use money, then we can still get a lot of the things that we need while controlling the budget for the towns and not getting into this cycle again. Again, a lot of philosophy. This is the reason why I have you all here and I'm trying to bounce off these ideas, is how do we set a policy for once we are there? How do we not get into this situation again? So
Like you just said,
you know,
Randy, this is like big philosophy, right?
it is, yes.
So I almost think that like the policy, like let's put it forward, right? But let's make sure we tell Lisa we need to carve out like a half-hour discussion on this. Because this is meaty, right? And there's going to
Yes.
be a lot of thoughts on this, knowing our board.
Mhm.
So I think we just need to really spend a lot of time going through it.
Right. And again, I'm spending a lot of time now too with Nancy and with Kevin because
Yeah.
they are our experts. So I want to make sure that what I'm trying to do, that we have a good process that they approve of
Yep.
and say is possible going forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think just as an aside on that, the school committee, if the policy is a may versus a require, I think you'll have better response, because the school committee doesn't necessarily want to lose their ability to appropriate funds when they want to from from
Yeah.
E&D.
Yes.
It's really their decision. It was their decision when we used the 2,000,006, 100% of it. It was their decision last year to use 100% of it.
Yeah.
So it's really, again, the suggestions, sure. I would say that, I mean, again, the full committee may feel differently about that, but it's really a decision of the school committee to make for as far as the
right.
budget. And, you know, finance subcommittee starts with that, looking at the early numbers and making.
And all of this comes from the finance department, Nancy, from the business office.
Yep.
Is all of this should be recommendations from the superintendent, which I would hope originate as far as the budget from the business office. So you need to be able to put forth going, you know, we recommend that the school committee use this money because otherwise we have to do this, this, or this. That's usually when the school committee is looking at appropriating more money. But yes, I agree that everybody needs to be able to have the flexibility to spend what we feel we need to. But I really want to try and set up from the start, which is in the business office, a sustainable model going forward. What do we do? And this shouldn't only be about what do we do if we need more funds. It should be about, okay, we have unanticipated revenue that comes in. Yes, I believe for at least the last 5 or 6 years from the collaboratives, we've been getting that money, unanticipated revenue. So we do get some money in. What are we going to do with that money? We can plan to use it, which is great, which is one more thing that I had not put in here that I wanted to under the E&D is, for if we have a stated project that we say we need $500,000 for, great, we're going to document it. You can ask for that excess over, $500,000 over the 3% to be used in what year. And then we can go ahead and use that as one-time costs. Planning some of those things would be good as well. All right, let's leave the top philosophical portion alone for a minute and just get into the E&D, which is a lot of where everyone's been talking.
Mhm.
So the couple of things that I put in here was this first part here. I don't know if you can see if I'm highlighting something.
Yep.
Okay, good. So the reserves unforeseen emergency needs such as unanticipated operating or capital costs or loss of revenue, which we had missed in here, for what E&D can be used, and should not be used regularly as a resource, as a revenue source in future budgets. That word regularly is what I want to make sure. Sometimes we may have to, we may decide to do that for different reasons, but regularly I want to make sure that it is known that that is not what we want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Coming in here, just reading. So current legislation limits the district's E&D balance to a maximum of 5% of the district's total general fund operating budget. It is recommended by auditors and financial advisors that we maintain between 3 to 5%. And again, we can take out that recommended by auditors and financial advisors. That's a lot from Triton's. And if we don't want to have that repeated throughout, I'm fine with that. But Nancy had 3 to 5% E&D. I would say 3 to 4% if we're going to put a range in there. Again, I don't want to get into the place where we have to use the E&D as revenue. I'd rather have the flexibility to say, we're building a little bit more than what we want in there. Where are we going to put it? What are we going to use it for? So I would probably say 3 to 4% if you're looking for a range versus just a minimum. So E&D balance to protect against unforeseen costs. The school committee may consider budgeting, and I like that addition. Anything in excess of 3% for additional investment in stabilization and OPEB reserve accounts, one-time purchases. I added in, and this is, Nancy, I had asked you these questions. I don't know if you were able to get an answer on whether we have the possibility of doing this, but I reached out to Andrew McLean, the Pepperell Town Administrator, to ask him, what would you like to see us do if we have additional revenue? And one thing he says is to pay down town debt principal. Don't know if that's a possibility. Nancy has the question to find out. I put in applied as funding towards the current year budget. Oop, I have 2 words. Or applied as funding source for the following year's budget or other needed use. My thought there again was, if we know we're going to have a big one-time cost, if we're going to have initial costs for a startup of a program that we're bringing in, it would be a great use for some of these funds. Instead of having it in the budget, pay for, out of what the towns are, get a startup going. And again, I added those things, trying to make it flexible and give suggestions on possible uses for, so that, each time we have a turnover in the school committee or a turnover in administration, and we sit here and look at the policy and say, well, I just don't know what we've ever done with this money before, or I don't have ideas. I wanted to put different ideas on what we could consider for the excess money. And I'm talking a lot, so I'm going to try and be quiet.
No, I think that's a good idea because there's a lot of young school committee members, especially.
I agree. Have we ever done something like giving back to go towards the town debt? Like, has that been ever a
No.
thing before?
Nope.
No.
That's Brendan. That's why I asked Nancy to look into whether we legally can do something like that,
Yeah.
and how that would work.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, I guess that's way down the road anyway, because I think you'd have to be fully funded with OPEB and stabilization and all that first probably, but they also vote that as 2.5 excluded debt. So the towns, we assess the towns a debt service. So theoretically, we could reduce the amount of the debt service by putting it in our budget. And then assess them a lower debt service. But again, it's not, I don't see that happening quickly. So that's probably not something we have to.
Yeah, but still, if we're setting a policy for
I mean,
once a year there.
Yeah, the
then we should
OPEB, the OPEB number is gigantic. And 10% of stabilization number that you were using is gigantic. So it will not happen in my lifetime, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I was gonna say, if we.
I don't
well,
think.
We're gonna have.
Or maybe it'll be
$2
in
to $3 million
Kevin's.
to start that off.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, if we take the excess that we have over a 3% in our END, cut cold turkey and don't have any END next year. We have somewhere just under $1 million in our capital stabilization account, I believe.
yes.
You put another 2.5 million in there, that's getting us fairly down that road of hitting the 10%, which is about $6 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what you're gonna see is that there's not, one of our issues is really just there's not enough revenue to support the budget as it is. So that's why we've ended up in the situation we're in. So next year, I don't anticipate getting a lot of revenue. And if you really do cut the budget by that $2 million or something like that, you're gonna have, I think you have bigger problems
Um,
going
So,
that
yeah.
direction.
So we're talking implementation right now.
Yeah, I
which
know,
is-
I
which
know,
is- Which is something that we
But I guess what I'm
absolutely
saying
have
is
to nail down.
some of these ideas I think are gonna be a little further off. That's all I was trying to say.
And that's fine. We are writing a policy for the future.
Yeah, okay.
And we want to make sure that it can handle the different situations getting there. Be flexible enough while we're getting there, and then what are we gonna do once we're there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So let's start cleaning some of this up. Let me just take, this is where we left off, so I'm just gonna resolve that. So this first one coming down under END where I put in, so by statute is largely unrestricted sound financial practice suggests that this reserve provides for the financing of unforeseen emergency needs such as unanticipated operating capital costs, and then added in the loss of revenue, and should not be used regularly as revenue source in future budgets. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Nancy, Kevin? That all works for you?
Yeah, I think, but again, I think you're gonna
Yeah.
get some pushback on that, but
Okay. We'll put it in for right now. I'll highlight this should, the comment going, question mark. Just
also-
so we know that that is the sticking point.
yeah, just as an aside too, if you have more than 3% in reserves and you're saying you can't use it for future budgets and those towns or numbers are high, are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm not saying that it can't. I said it
Okay,
should not be
alright.
used regularly. So
Okay,
when we have to, we certainly can.
yep, okay,
But I just don't want it to, because that's how we got to where we were. We
Right.
started using $250,000 every year. And then that grew a little bit more because we needed a little bit more and the towns couldn't afford it. And then we had more left over going into the E&D and put us up over the 5%, which grew how much we had to put in. And then it just snowballed from there until we're using all of our E&D.
yeah, and again, this is not unexpected, given that we're getting no state funding. Just wanted to throw that
absolutely.
out there, yeah.
Right.
Or limited state funding.
Absolutely. But again, I think we can get on a better footing even with all of the challenges that we have.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm trying to do, is just kind of get us in a better spot. Okay, moving along, the current legislation, all right. Nancy, what would you be comfortable with between 3 to 4%? Keeping it as a minimum of 3%, or you're on mute. That's okay.
Sorry, I think, you're putting in a statement about what's recommended for reserves, right? That's what you're trying to
Okay.
do?
Yeah. Again, we can take out that language from the auditors and financial advisors
Yeah, I think you
and
should.
just say that the school committee recommends having.
Yeah. And given that, so just as a way of, I guess it doesn't matter to me if you leave 3% in there, or 3 to 5 or 3 to 4, whatever you want to do, Randy.
Okay.
I mean, the decision to use any reserves will be made when the budget process is happening. So what we will do is recommend anything that's over that 3%. I mean, again, the implementation part of this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's fine. If you want to leave it as 3, that's fine.
Okay. Jackie,
If anyone else has
Lisa,
an opinion.
Kevin, Jeremy, anyone have a preference?
I always feel like flexibility and range is better, but
I think 3 to 4.
yeah.
Okay. So put that in, and then we'll put Nancy's in. Great. Do we want to take out the auditors and financial advisors and just say it is recommended that
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, then we have the school committee may consider budgeting anything in excess of the 3% for additional investment in the stabilization of OPEB or stabilization or OPEB reserve accounts, one-time purchases, payment toward town debt principal, and again, we'll verify whether we can have that in there or not. And these are just suggestions so that people can have options and they understand some of the options they might have. Applied as funding toward the current year budget, or applied as funding source for the following year's budget or other needed use.
I like that.
I do too. I think that's good to have in there.
So what is this? Why is this not coming out? Oh, well, I'm just going to delete that now. I don't know why that wasn't coming out before. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, so that's the sentence that I just read. And Nancy, you'll find out as far as the reducing the town debt, whether that's something we can do. Okay. Next is the school committee on occasion may approve by a 2/3 vote the use of existing E&D funds as additional revenue within a current fiscal year in order to cover unanticipated revenue shortfalls or to fund non-recurring or unforeseen expenditures that are deemed as either extraordinary or unavoidable by district administration and the school committee. Any vote to increase the current year budget through the use of E&D funds is considered an increase in the budget, district budget, and shall be submitted to, you had both town, and I just changed that to all, Nancy, because there's 3 of them, not 2. Both usually means 2. Towns for approval in accordance with DESE regulations. So this is just laying out the process. The only thing I wasn't crazy about, and we're wondering whether we actually need is just revenue shortfalls, or to fund non-recurring or unforeseen expenditures. Do we need that that are deemed as either extraordinary or unavoidable by the district administrative and school committee? Do we need that statement? Do people like having that in there?
I think it's a signal that these are things that are coming up that it's not like we're dumbfounded by these things. It's like something legitimate came up that we need to throw money at, right? So
Okay,
I'm okay with the language in there.
okay, great. All right, so that ends the E&D section of this.
Okay.
With the exception of where I highlighted the should, are we happy with what this says and that it contains everything that we want for the E&D reserve class?
I'm happy with it. I think when we go to full committee, we should just make sure we're kind of helping them do the comparison to say, like, here's what we revised and took out, and just kind of walk through that part of the
Yeah, to
conversation.
understand, Jackie, that this is not an existing policy that we have in place right now.
True. I guess like some of the questions that we had in there, or yes,
Yeah.
guys, we considered this. This is language that we looked at, and I don't know,
Yep.
just
Okay.
as a starting point for a
Yeah.
conversation.
So I can certainly highlight some of the questions that we contemplated and some of
Yeah.
the areas that we can change
Yep.
that don't necessarily need to be set in stone on per the law.
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm hoping capital stabilization is going to be a little bit easier than that section because that's really kind of the big change that we're doing. So just looking in here, so I can leave this in there, Nancy, per your note. I'm assuming just leave this as is chapter 71, section 16G and a half, Nancy?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So. Okay. So the capital stabilization fund is a reserve allowed by MGL to provide the district with the ability to accumulate resources for any purpose in which the district could otherwise borrow funds, as well as any other lawful purpose upon approval of the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services. Capital stabilization funds may be used to finance capital activities as well as cover unanticipated one-time capital needs. The district shall maintain a capital stabilization fund in accordance with MGL Chapter 71, Section 16G and a half. Additionally, it is the intention of the district that the capital stabilization fund be funded by certified available excess E&D above the 3% recommended minimum balance, one-time revenues, and or a line item in the district's general fund operating budget. In an effort to accumulate resources within the capital stabilization fund, the district will include a line item within the general fund for $250,000 appropriation annually until the maximum limit is reached. Should probably have more flexibility in that. So in an effort to accumulate resources, the district may include. I think I had one other change for this section. Hold on. Let me come back to what I had.
I'd also probably remove, Randy, the amount.
The 250? Okay.
Well, just because if you wanted to do more or less, you could do that. This
Yeah.
may,
Okay. So we can do that. Okay. One
this
change
just
that
says, yeah, you'll have an appropriation, which is great.
1 second. Okay, so the change I'm suggesting here is instead of just saying that, it is the intention of the school committee that the capital stabilization fund may not exceed 10%. I don't want to limit it to the 10%, but I don't want to be continually funding it above that. So what I changed it to is it shall not be further funded once it exceeds 10%, which means that we're not going to be putting in money from our E&D. We're not going to be having that line item in there. But we're going to have money that is generated from income of having it invested. And again, I'm thinking once we get to that place. Is that something, Nancy and Kevin, that you agree with, don't agree with?
Yeah, I think that's fine. The 10% number is great. If we got to that, that'd be incredible.
Okay. And the language there that it shall not be funded further once it exceeds 10%?
I mean, I think the school committee can address it at that point if it does get to that point and they want to save for a roof and the roofs are more than that. That would be a school
Okay.
committee call, I
Yeah,
think.
and
Yeah.
that was what I was trying to figure out how to put in here is, but what I don't want to happen though is for somebody, this year say,
Yeah.
hey, it'd be great if we can get an extra, $3 million in there for a roof. And then those people leave and nobody's written it down and nobody's
Yep.
documented why
Nope,
we're
it's fine.
saving more money.
Yeah.
So I would like to have, if
Mhm.
we have a special project, I'd like some form of documentation so we know what we're working towards. And then we know when we've achieved it, we can spend that money and then, continue in another manner.
Yep.
I think where your sentence starts with making it clear it's the intention,
Yep.
covers enough flexibility to address that if we get to that point.
Okay. All right, so then let me accept those. Read through that and it's just about 10 o'clock. So I want to be cognizant of that. People happy with this? Jackie, Lisa, is there something that you want to make sure that that is documented somewhere in this policy as far as special savings for a specific item should have a process to be documented?
Are you thinking of adding a line like that?
Yeah, maybe in the general saying if any of these funds have a specific for future use, excuse me, that we specifically want to save above these amounts, that we just have to have a documentation of it.
Yeah.
Think about that. We're gonna have one
yeah.
more meeting the morning before the school committee, so we can always add 1 or 2 things in before the school committee.
Yep.
Okay. Mhm.
But just I get what you're saying, like
Yeah.
continuity's
Yeah.
sake, right? Like going from one year to the next, it's hard to remember sometimes, or new folks come in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, if everybody's happy with capital stabilization, we're almost done. If you want to just read OPEB should hopefully be very simple and easy. So the district currently maintains an irrevocable other post-employment benefits trust fund in accordance with MGL 32B Section 20 for the purpose of accumulating resources to provide legally required retiree health insurance benefits. The object of the OPEB trust fund is to accumulate assets to fully fund the actuarially calculated liability of providing these future health insurance benefits. It is in the best financial interest of the district that the OPEB trust fund balance not be withdrawn until the point in time at which the actuarially calculated OPEB liability is fully funded. In an effort to accumulate resources when the OPEB trust fund, the school committee may include a contribution to the OPEB trust in the annual general fund budget annually until fully funded. Yeah. Well, here's a question, is because OPEB is for a very specific purpose. Do we want to have that flexibility, or do we want to say that it needs to be funded? So that, in future times, we don't say, we're going to give this up this year. We're going to give this up this year. We're going to give this up this year. I know that's been an option that the school committee has considered in the past. But again, I'm looking at a policy going forward. Was that always a good thing to be doing and considering, or do we want to limit that here for the OPEB account only?
I mean, I'd leave it the way you have it, Randy, right now. And
Okay.
let's hear if there's any feedback from the school committee on that or finance.
Then
Yeah.
I will accept these changes. Extra spaces there. Okay, and then this is done right now.
Okay.
Okay. The only last thing I wanted to do is there is policy FCB, retirement of facilities. We didn't get to it today, and I don't want to bring it forward without the committee at least looking at it. But I was wondering if we can have a vote that we make sure we go over this on the 21st in the morning. And we can bring any changes, or we can pull it from consideration for the school committee. But being that the retirement of facilities is something that may affect the budget this year, certainly, it's a timely thing if we're going to make major changes to it. That I'd like to at least try to get it in front of the school committee for debate sooner than later.
So you're looking for a motion to make sure we review it?
That
At
we
our next-
review FCB the morning of, but Robin needs this before that to put it on the agenda and include it in the packet. So the motion would be to put forth policy FCB to the full school committee at the next meeting. And then what we can do is that morning we'll review it. Any changes, I can let everybody know any changes from what's here or from the original. And we can either pull it from first reading, I can just present the changes, or go from there.
Robin, does that work for you? It's tight.
Robin,
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna, you're just making the motion so that we can add it to the
Right.
school committee agenda, and if we get the information and it's available for the school committee to review and they're comfortable, it's just she's being proactive, so I understand what you're doing, Randy. So that we don't have to wait until after the next committee meeting, it just would delay it another month or longer, so it works. You could probably just say so moved.
So
moved.
moved. Yeah.
okay, I'll give that to Lisa and then Jackie for the second. Okay, Lisa,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Please, next meeting, which is on the 18th rather,
Yeah.
we're gonna be looking at DIB again. We'll look at FCB. So continue to look at this, digest what's here, see if we've missed anything, see if things aren't mixing well, or any changes that need to be brought.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Randy, so do you want me to just post this same agenda for the 18th?
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
All right,
thanks,
thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Yes. I make
All right.
a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Okay, Lisa,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.